It was a February night in Florida, and the phone would not stop ringing. A locked hotel room. Curtains drawn tight, the hum of the air conditioner, the faint trace of perfume mixed with sedatives still lingering in the air. When staff finally opened the door, they said they would never forget what they saw. The woman who had once made America turn its head now lay perfectly still. She was only 39. She was Anna Nicole Smith. The first headlines called it an overdose. The next paper added the word possible. Television replayed the images everyone thought they knew. The Guess jeans girl with platinum hair and lips like honey, the dazzling Playboy Playmate, the bride of an oil tycoon twice her age, the young mother who laughed for the cameras, then broke into tears after losing her son. With every reprint, her story looked like an overexposed photograph, bright everywhere, except where it truly mattered. 5 months before that night, a hospital in the Bahamas saw a very different scene. Anna clutching her 20-year-old son Daniel, crying his name in disbelief. He was gone, and the hole his death left had turned her smile fragile as glass. To those who worked with her, even her silence seemed like a performance written by Hollywood itself. The bombshell, the ditz, the dreamer. Yet behind the makeup were eyes that drifted every time someone mentioned the word home. Her road to fame was never smooth. She was a Texas girl who dropped out of school, married young to escape a dead-end life, and transformed herself into a blonde icon glowing from every billboard. She married a man who had already lived most of his life, and that wedding became national gossip. When he died, a labyrinth of lawsuits opened, pulling her into a battle where every document cost her another piece of her soul. The cameras never left, the headlines never stopped, and pills became both her lifeline and her anchor, dragging her under. On the morning they found her, the old questions returned, fresh as if invented anew. Was it simply the accident of a heart too tired to keep beating? Or the final note of a plan written in someone else's hand? Who prescribed the drugs? Who guarded her nights? Who profited each time her chaos sold millions of views? Or was it nothing but disorder, with a woman at its center who wanted one simple thing all her life? To be loved, not for her body, not for her scandal, but for herself. To understand how a girl no one knew could climb to the top of American fame and then fall into its deepest abyss, we have to step backward, back to the dusty heat of Texas, where another name was once called softly in a cramped house. Before she was Anna Nicole Smith, she was a barefoot girl with worn shoes and a dream bigger than the horizon. That is where the story truly begins. Before she was a tabloid obsession, before her name was written in neon, she was simply Vicki Lynn Hogan. Born on November 28, 1967 in Houston, Texas, she entered a world already stacked against her. Her parents' marriage fractured quickly. Her father left when she was still a baby. Her mother, Virgie, raised her with a firm hand, but the family was poor, and the house often felt too small for the storms inside it. As a little girl, Vicki was shy, clumsy, unsure of her place. Teachers described her as quiet, easily distracted. She spent hours daydreaming, scribbling notes in the margins of her school books, imagining a life far beyond the flat, dusty landscapes of rural Texas. Like Norma Jean before her, she longed for escape, but escape seemed impossible. By her early teens, She was restless and unsettled. She didn't excel in school, often skipping classes. The other kids laughed at her accent, her awkwardness, her hand-me-down clothes. She hid behind big hair and heavy makeup, trying to look older, tougher, untouchable. Inside, she was still just a girl who wanted to be seen. At 15, she dropped out of high school. With no diploma, no skills, and few options, she bounced between low-paying jobs, waitressing, working at fast food counters, folding clothes at department stores. Nothing seemed to stick. Each shift felt like another reminder that her dreams had no map. At 16, she made a decision that would shape her life: marriage. Billy Smith was a cook at the fried chicken restaurant where she worked, and though barely older than her, he represented stability, or at least the illusion of it. In 1985, barely 17, Vicky became a wife. A year later, she became a mother, giving birth to her son, Daniel. For a moment, it seemed like the beginnings of a family might fill the void. But the fairy tale was fragile. The marriage cracked under the weight of poverty and immaturity. By the late 1980s, Vicky was a single mother struggling to provide for her child. She moved back and forth between her mother's house and cheap apartments, constantly chasing rent, constantly falling short. This was the foundation of the woman the world would later call Anna Nicole Smith, a girl from nowhere, carrying scars of abandonment, desperate for a way out. She had no connections, no safety net, no guide, but her own hunger for something more. And hunger, when sharp enough, can push a person to transform. For Vicky, that transformation began in the unlikeliest of places, a smoky strip club on the edge of town, where the stage lights would shine on her for the first time. The nightclub was loud, smoky, and pulsing with neon. It wasn't Hollywood. It wasn't Paris. It wasn't even downtown Houston. It was a strip club called Rick's, a place where escape was sold by the song. For Vicky Lynn Hogan, it was never about seduction. It was survival. A single mother in her early 20s, she needed money fast, and this stage offered more than waitressing ever could. When she walked under the lights for the first time, something unexpected happened. The shy Texas girl disappeared. In her place stood a woman who could stop men mid-conversation. Her height, her curves, her platinum hair. Suddenly, she wasn't invisible. She had presence, she had power, and people noticed. One of those people was a photographer. He suggested she try modeling, maybe even pose for magazines. At first, Vicky laughed it off. She wasn't the type, she thought. But when she looked at the photos later, she saw something she hadn't recognized before: potential. There was more than desperation in those eyes. There was allure. In 1992, that allure caught the attention of Playboy. Vicky Lynn became Anna Nicole Smith. The transformation was instant, almost mythic. She graced the cover, then was named Playmate of the Year. Overnight, the girl who once worked the fryers at a chicken joint was now America's fantasy. From there, doors opened that had been sealed her whole life. Guess Jeans cast her in a campaign that made her a global sensation. Billboards towered over highways featuring Anna in vintage-styled glamour shots, voluptuous, blonde, unapologetic. Fashion writers compared her to Marilyn Monroe, and for Anna, that comparison was oxygen. Marilyn had been her idol, her North Star. Now, the world was calling her the second coming. But the dream wasn't only about modeling. Anna wanted more. She chased film roles, appearing in comedies like The Naked Gun 3313. The critics sneered, but she didn't care. She had money, fame, and a story no one could believe. The girl from nowhere who had turned herself into a cultural icon, yet beneath the sequins, the cracks were already forming. Fame was addictive, but it was also fickle. Studio executives liked the curves but doubted the talent. Directors cast her for spectacle, not substance. She was seen but not respected, adored but not protected. And then, in the middle of this glittering chaos, she met a man who would change everything. J. Howard Marshall II, an oil tycoon nearly 60 years older. For some, it was love. For others, it was strategy. For Anna, it was both, affection and security. A father figure and a ticket out of every hardship she had ever known. It looked like a fairy tale. Playmate marries billionaire. But in reality, it was the first chapter of a darker saga, one that would follow her to her grave. By the mid-1990s, Anna Nicole Smith was everywhere. Her face beamed from the covers of magazines. Her body towered over highways on massive guest billboards. Her name floated in late-night jokes and gossip columns. She was no longer Vicki Lynn from Texas. She was a cultural phenomenon. And then came the wedding that cemented her legend. In 1994, at age 26, she married J. Howard Marshall II, an oil billionaire nearly 90 years old. The image of the blonde bombshell and the frail tycoon became front-page news across the world. To some, it was a love story. To others, it was a punchline. The tabloids branded her a gold digger. Talk show hosts mocked her. But Anna insisted it was real. "He took care of me," she said. "No one ever had before." Less than a year later, Marshall was dead. And with his death came the storm. The billionaire's family refused to give Anna a cent. What followed was one of the longest, most vicious inheritance battles in American history. Courtrooms filled with cameras. Headlines screamed about greed, betrayal, and a widow fighting against a dynasty. Anna became both villain and victim, painted as a caricature in mink and diamonds. At the same time, her career stumbled. Hollywood offered few roles beyond parody. She made cameos, posed for photo spreads, even launched her own reality show years later. But the respect she craved never came. The weight of public ridicule grew heavier. She numbed herself with pills, painkillers, sedatives, whatever quieted the noise. Her body, once worshipped, became another battlefield. Weight gain sparked cruel tabloid covers. Paparazzi followed her relentlessly, photographing every stumble, every slurred word, every late-night collapse. The same public that once adored her now treated her as spectacle, proof that beauty always comes with a price. Still, Anna fought to keep going. She laughed loud, posed bold, lived like she had nothing to lose. But behind the laughter, shadows gathered. The lawsuits dragged on for years. Her fortune shrank. Her dependency on medication grew, and her private life grew more chaotic. Friends who came and went, lovers who betrayed, advisors who seemed to profit more from her downfall than her success. By the early 2000s, Anna Nicole Smith was both everywhere and nowhere. Her image plastered across tabloids, her soul slipping out of reach. The dream that had once lifted her from poverty was now suffocating her. And then came the blow that would shatter her completely, the sudden, devastating loss of the person she loved most. The breaking point came in September 2006. Anna Nicole Smith had just given birth to her daughter Danilyn when the unthinkable happened. Her first child, Daniel, the boy she had raised through poverty, the one constant in her turbulent life, collapsed and died while visiting her in the hospital. He was only 20. Witnesses said she screamed, clutching his lifeless body, begging him to wake up. For years she had been mocked as a cartoon, a joke in sequins. But in that moment she was only a mother, broken beyond repair. Friends would later say that Daniel's death was the day the light left her eyes. She never recovered. Grief consumed her. She spiraled further into pills, methadone, sedatives, a pharmacy's worth of prescriptions. The same tabloids that once laughed at her weight now circled like vultures over her mourning. She hid from cameras, her speech slurred, her movements heavy. Even when she appeared in public, it was clear she was drowning. The lawsuits over her late husband's fortune still raged on, each hearing dragging her name through the mud again. Lawyers and advisers circled her estate like sharks, some claiming to protect her, others accused of exploiting her. She trusted the wrong people. She pushed away the right ones, and she grew more isolated even as the world still watched. Her personal life unraveled further. Multiple men claimed to be the father of her newborn daughter, each one filing suits, each one feeding the circus. TV panels debated custody, tabloids printed paternity charts, and Anna was reduced to scandal headlines once again. Behind the neon and the noise, her health was collapsing. She fainted at photo shoots, canceled appearances, disappeared for days. Her body bore the toll of years of drug use, weight fluctuations, infections, constant fatigue. Yet she kept smiling for the cameras, kept pretending the performance wasn't killing her. By February 2007, Anna Nicole Smith was living in a hotel in Hollywood, Florida. She was 39, but she looked decades older. On February 8th, she was found unresponsive, surrounded by pill bottles. The official cause, an accidental overdose. But as with everything in her life, the story was never so simple. Some said she was haunted by Daniel's death and simply couldn't go on. Others whispered about conspiracies, about people close to her who had too much to gain. Investigations followed. Accusations flew. But the truth remained tangled in shadows. In the end, the girl who once dreamed of escape had been trapped in a cage of fame, wealth, and grief. Her fall was not sudden. It was a slow unraveling, years in the making, ending in silence in a hotel room far from the home she had always wanted. Even as her life spun out of control, Anna Nicole Smith never stopped reaching for redemption. Beneath the chaos and the scandal, she longed for a second chance, a chance to be more than the headlines, more than the caricature the world had made of her. After Daniel's death, she tried to pour her remaining strength into her newborn daughter, Danny-Lyn. Friends said she would cradle the baby for hours, whispering promises that this child would never feel the abandonment she had endured. In those rare, quiet moments, Anna seemed softer, calmer, almost determined to rewrite her story through motherhood. She also spoke of wanting to return to work, to act again, to rebuild her image not as a punchline, but as a performer. She reached out to photographers she trusted, hoping to capture a fresher, gentler side of herself. "I want them to see me as a person," she reportedly told one confidant, "not just the joke they made me into." There were glimpses of resilience. She enrolled in detox programs, spoke of cutting back on pills, and for short stretches seemed clearer, more present. She dreamed of launching her own projects, building a stable future for her daughter. At times, the laughter that once made her famous returned, not the hollow laugh of a reality show, but the unguarded joy of Vicki Lynn, the Texas girl she had once been. But healing was uneven. The lawsuits dragged on, draining her energy. The media frenzy over Danny Lynn's paternity kept her name splashed across tabloids. Every step toward recovery seemed to trigger another wave of intrusion and ridicule. The people closest to her, lawyers, companions, doctors, were often accused of enabling her addictions rather than stopping them. Still, she clung to hope. Just weeks before her death, she appeared in new photos, smiling with her daughter, her eyes tired but luminous. She told interviewers she wanted to retreat from the spotlight to raise Danny Lynn in peace. "I want a normal life," she said, a phrase almost tragic, because normal had never been within her reach. Anna Nicole Smith's final chapter was not just one of collapse. It was also one of defiance, a refusal to give up, a fragile but genuine attempt to reclaim what fame had stolen from her: dignity, love, and the right to simply live as herself. But fate, or perhaps the shadows around her, never gave her that chance. When the news of Anna Nicole Smith's death broke on February 8, 2007, the world reacted with a strange mix of shock and inevitability. Television networks ran montages of her most glamorous moments, while tabloids replayed her stumbles and scandals. Some mourned a lost beauty, others mocked a fallen star. Few paused to see the human being beneath the caricature. The official story was simple: an accidental overdose. But the questions were endless. Who had given her the pills? Who had failed to protect her? Who stood to gain from her estate, her daughter, her legend? Courtrooms buzzed with depositions. Lawyers argued over custody of Danny Lynn. Men came forward claiming paternity, their faces splashed across headlines like actors auditioning for a role. Anna's death was not the end of the circus. It was its cruel encore. Yet amid the noise, one image remained untouchable: Anna as a mother, cradling her newborn daughter. The courts eventually named Larry Burkhead, one of her former partners, as Danny Lynn's father. Today, that child grows up carrying the legacy of a woman the world both adored and destroyed. For the public, Anna Nicole became something larger than life and death. To some, she was a cautionary tale, a warning about the price of fame, the dangers of excess, the cruelty of celebrity culture. To others, she was a modern-day Marilyn Monroe, a symbol of fragile beauty consumed by a world that wanted too much. The comparisons were more than skin-deep. Both were blonde bombshells. Both chased respect they rarely received. Both died young and under clouds of mystery. In the years since, documentaries, books, and endless retrospectives have tried to answer the same questions. Was she a manipulator or manipulated? A gold digger or a lost girl looking for security? A tragic figure or a resilient survivor? The truth is that she was all of these things and more. Her story is one of contradictions. She rose from poverty to global fame, yet never escaped the loneliness of her beginnings. She laughed louder than anyone in the room, yet cried harder when the camera stopped. She lived as a fantasy, but longed only for something real. Perhaps that is why people still talk about Anna Nicole Smith. Not just because she was beautiful, not just because she was scandalous, but because she embodied the fragile line between adoration and destruction, between dream and nightmare. In the end, her legacy is not just the headlines or the court cases. It is the reminder that behind every glittering image is a person, scarred, searching, human. Anna Nicole Smith may not have been perfect, but in her imperfections, millions saw their own reflection. The hunger for love, the fear of loss, the desperate hope for a better tomorrow. And maybe that is what she truly left behind. Not the scandal, not the fortune, but the light that flickered through her cracks. A light that still makes us ask, all these years later, who was Anna Nicole Smith really?